everyone. Today I would like to talk to you about my journey into paganism and why I chose paganism. So, to get started with my early beliefs, as a kid, obviously none of this really mattered to me. I was baptized as a Methodist when I was like 8 or whatever. Didn't really matter too much to me. But as I turned into my teenage years, I became an anti-theist. I thought religion was dumb, and that basically people who had religious beliefs were dumb. I was very narrow-minded about it. Even though that did include most of my family, I just thought that particular aspect of what they thought was dumb. I was an anti-theist. As I turned into a young adult, I had switched over to atheist, as I had stopped caring what others believe. They can believe whatever they want. Essentially, I just took all the chips out of the game. I was too busy. Was young, my late teens, early 20s to, mid 20s. I was just too busy to even care about anything to do with religion or spirituality at all. Then, as I left the young adult phase and entered more into just adulthood, middle-aged adulthood, I became a lot more agnostic, and a lot more of a spiritualist. I thought I had felt a few presents a few times throughout my life, and I wasn't for sure how to exactly explain that, and had left it as it could or could not have been a spiritual experience. Though at this time, my views were definitely a lot more Christian-based, and I started kind of developing something similar to what a lot of people might believe of like a guardian angel is, but I kind of started to believe God was I referred to it just cheekily because I thought it was funny as a personal Jesus, but I thought God or each person was what he needed them to be. As I had just seen a lot of coincidences and a lot of people who felt the closeness or wanted to be close had felt it, and others had gotten by just fine without it. I then started delving a little more into Christianity and Abrahamic religions, as I started to feel a bit of a pull to kind of just have a better understanding and see if people had already put words to thoughts that I had. But then that would take me to the next step, as I read up and studied and listened to more and more Christians and Christian beliefs. I started to veer away from the Abrahamic religions, Christianity specifically. There were a few problems that I had in particular, and granted, there are many denominations, so this definitely might not apply. Christians that you know, all of the Christians that you know, if you're a listener and you are Christian yourself, this might not apply to you, but maybe some of these points do. Now, the first one, if I remember correctly, is Sola Scriptura. This is essentially the belief that the Bible is infallible and is 100% words of God. This is where a lot of times Christians and science will clash, because these are where you have the young earth creationists, things like that. I definitely don't believe in this. I have met some Christians that believe a lot of it's left for interpretation, that I could get behind, but there were just a lot that were too strict about what is in the Bible is 100% law and how things should be. That didn't really vibe with me. The next part I had was the Trinity didn't really make sense to me, and I think that's a fair enough statement on its own that not even a lot of Christians would argue. I'm not saying it's incomprehensible, not arguing that. It just didn't make a lot of sense. And the triomny traits, I don't necessarily believe a God could possess all the triomny traits without there being a few problems, at least the way that it's set up in the Christian sense. For those who don't know, triomni is referring to omnibenevolent, omnipotent, and omniscient. So all-loving, knows all, capable of all, has the power to do all, essentially. I just have problems with those because there's a lot of fallout that happens if you have a god with those, and we can go into that in a further day if you want. Next up, UPGs, or unverified personal gnosis, from all over the world and all throughout time have been pretty vastly different, and they don't really have a very good way of explaining that too terribly well, to an extent. Next thing I had a bit of a problem with is the fact of the Son, or Jesus. I believe he actually did exist as a historical figure and all that. Then there have been some things that could be argued to prove it that have been found. But to me, a human-god hybrid isn't something I believe in. There's also, depending on which Bible you read or other sources you read, there is hints of polytheism in the Bible. Now, whether they could be interpreted, whether they meant actual gods in there, or if they just referring to gods as in like the thing that they believe in but not acknowledging their existence. Again, it's up for interpretation, and interpretation is part of my problem with the omni trait, so we'll leave that there. My last thing I kind of had a problem with, which is going to be pretty ironic considering the stereotype that heathens have or other pagans. There's just something that feels odd about having to promise my soul or give up my soul to a God or Jesus to be then promised eternal salvation. Otherwise, if I don't do this, I'm going to be eternally damned. It sounds more demonic than anything I've read, honestly, in a lot of heathenry. Once I got away from the Abrahamic faith, I started looking around to see what else there was. At first, I was very torn. I was going from atheist to agnostic, right? So zero belief in God as one, let alone plural. But the more I looked into polytheism, the more a lot of things started making sense to me. The fact that no one is left out. In polytheism, there's multiple gods. You have the god for the quote-unquote the meek. There's gods for the quiet introverts, the people who don't really want to be seen or heard too much. There's gods for the extroverts, the people who can be loud. There's gods for the warrior type, the farmer. And I'm not saying there's one for every single particular thing. In a monotheist mindset, all have to fit under the umbrella of what the one God sees fit. In a polytheism, there are multiple umbrellas to catch everyone. Not to mention, if you just look throughout history, humans naturally develop polytheism religions most of the time anyways, as monotheism was a bit more rare to develop. Polytheism also helps explain vastly different UPGs. Different gods help explain different experiences people have, which then can also be extrapolated to help explain the various religions better. If people are having these different experiences, it's easy to see why the different religions could form from that. And lastly, another nice thing is in most polytheism religions I've seen, there isn't a promised torment. There isn't a burning in a pit of eternal fire just for not believing the right thing or being wrong. Almost all of them are more centralized at being just a good person. Now, there are some torment afterlives for some people, and some of them. For instance, in the Norse, the bitter cold of Niflheim is reserved for the oathbreakers and the betrayers. But that also could be a bit of a twist taken from the tragic comedy of Dante's Inferno, where they have the bottom level of hell is a frozen wasteland saved for betrayers. There is always chance for some Christian influence amongst heathen text. I'm sure you all know that. After all of that, why did I settle into heathenry? So it is a bit of a personal experience. Besides all the things I just stated about how polytheism was beginning to make a lot of sense to me, I had a UPG while listening to the Havamal. It was the one with Odin, or at least what I perceived to be as Odin. That's definitely what I believe, though. That felt right. Felt right all day. From there on out. So I just started digging deeper. Started doing some research. And the more I dug, the more I learned, the more it all just kind of clicked and started fitting better and better. And another reason I really thought heathenry was nice was the fact of how they have the mentality of frith versus grith, mutual respect and honor, respect for other religions. The fact that there is no prostrating, no witnessing. Others don't want to believe that. You don't have to believe. And I really enjoyed the fact that your race, gender, sexual preference, your heritage, culture, everything is completely irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. Does not matter. Some will say that it does, but a lot more will call those people fuckheads. So who really cares what they think? So that is a nice thing. It's something that's welcome for all. And it was all those reasons that helped me decide that Norse paganism, Germanic paganism, heathenry is right for me. Finally, I just accepted to myself that, yep, this is what I believe. And I decided that I was going to talk to my wife about it. I had gone through all of this thoughts without talking to my wife about it, which is a horrible thing to do, by the way, people. You should definitely talk to your spouses if you have big things in your life going on. But I felt very, very silly. I did. Until I just kind of came to terms with myself, and my wife is a very loving, caring woman. We both are very accepting people in our lives. So I just told her, and I'm like, look, I think I may have found faith. And she had kind of had a bit of a hint when I was diving into Christianity a bit, because she had even asked me, he's like, are you having a bit of a midlife crisis? Joked. And I don't believe I'm having a midlife crisis, no. But when I decided to pray, I actually had contacted one of my Christian friends to basically ask for advice, because I never had, and I had no idea about what I was feeling about it. I kind of knew what I had wanted to do. I wrote a simple poem for Bragi and burned it for him, inviting him into my house. This is before I had an offering table set up. So I knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to process my feelings about actually doing everything and kind of feeling a little ridiculous. And he just kind of reaffirmed me that, for him it is a feel-good thing to actually do it all. And I did hear from others that, it does feel weird at first, as you are basically starting up a new routine, not even a new routine, just doing a new thing, a new activity for the first time. It is daunting. It is awkward feeling at first, but as I've gone on more and more, it's definitely feeling a lot more comforting, a lot more natural. Although I do struggle. I get nervous even though I'm by myself. I don't know why. I'm not normally a nervous guy, but I still do get a little nervous, and I always fuck up. I'll pre-think what I'm gonna say, and I still mess it up every time, but that's part of it. I still haven't been a pagan for too long, but it has been a lot more comforting. With all that being said, I would like to hear your guys' stories, whether it's becoming a pagan, Hellenist, Christian, agnostic, atheist, anti-theist, anything. Put it down in the comments. Love to read it. I hope you guys enjoyed my story, or at the very least, were entertained. May the gods bless you.